稣圣名正道。
In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I speak.
上次谈到神寻找代求的人，
On the last occasion, I talked about how God is seeking for those who ask.
神也寻求迷失的人。
Likewise, God is also seeking for the lost.
那神还寻找什么人？
Now, who else is God seeking?
我们请看《使徒行传》13章
Let's turn to Acts chapter 13,
22节。
verse 22.
使徒行传13章22节。
Acts chapter 13, verse 22. Verse 22. And when he had removed him, he raised up for them David as king, to whom also he gave testimony and said, I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart, who will do all my will.
当神废了扫罗作王，
After God had rejected Saul as king,
神就寻找一个合他心意的人来做王。
God sought a man who was after his heart, his own heart, to be the next king.
那结果神寻的大卫，
And God found David,
因为大卫是合神心意的人。
because David was a man after the heart of God.
我们要效法大卫，
Now we have to emulate David.
不是要做王，但是却是要做一个合神心意的人。
Now not to become a king, but rather to be one with the heart of God.
因为做王的不一定能够进入天国的，
Because even though you may be a king, you may not be able to enter the kingdom of heaven.
但是作为一个合神心意的人，一定可以进入天国的。
But if you are a man after God's heart, then definitely you will.
所以我们要求神帮助我们作为一个合神心意的人。
Therefore, we have to ask God to help us to become a person after God's own heart.
那大卫他是怎样合神心意呢？
Now, how did David exhibit this characteristic?
第一点，
Firstly,
大卫在信心上是合神心意的。
David was after the heart of God with regards to his faith.
我们请看撒母耳记上17章
Let us refer to 1 Samuel chapter 17,
36跟37节。
verse 36 to 37.
撒母耳记上17章
1 Samuel chapter 17,
36跟37节。
verse 36 and verse 37. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 36 to 37, verse 36. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. Moreover, David said, The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, Go, and the Lord be with you.
大卫在牧羊的日子，一般来说是平静安稳的。
When David was a shepherd, his life would have typically been a very peaceful and tranquil one.
但有时候也会突然有危险来到。
But there will be times when danger encroaches.
面对狮子和熊，大卫并没有逃跑，
Now in the face of the lion and the bear, David did not flee,
因为他不是想到这些野兽对他的危险，
because he was not focused on the danger that these beasts had towards him.
他是想到这些野兽对那些羊群的危险。
Rather, what was in his mind was the danger posed by the lion and bear to the sheep.
他身为羊的牧者，他有这个责任要来保护这些羊群，脱离这些野兽的危害。
And as the shepherd, he had the responsibility to protect these sheep from these beasts.
所以他信靠神的帮助，打死这一些野兽，拯救这一些羊群，脱离这一些危险。
Therefore, he relied on God for help, and he defeated the beasts and rescued these sheep from danger.
那现在面对歌利亚的骂战，
Now, as Goliath was cursing, defying the armies of God,
以色列人想到歌利亚的强大，就不敢出战。
the Israelites did not dare to fight when they saw how mighty Goliath was.
但是大卫是想到神的大能，他就勇敢出战。
However, David was reminded of the almightiness of God, and that was why he had the courage to step forward.
所以大卫对歌利亚说
That is why David said to Goliath,：“
你来攻打我是靠刀枪，但是我来攻打你是靠神的名。”
He said to me, You come to me with the sword and spear, but I come to you with the name of the Lord.
我们在这里看到大卫的信心。
Now here we see clearly the faith of David.
就是在患难中，不是想到患难的危险，而是想到神。
And that is in times of trials or troubles, he was not fixated on the dangers, but rather he was fixated on God.
不是惧怕，乃是信靠神。
He did not fear, but he had faith.
所以大卫的信心真的是合神心意的。
That is why David was a man after God's own heart.
今天我们的生活一般来说啊，都是平安的，
Today, in our everyday lives, most of it is pretty peaceful.
但是也会突然之间有意外、有灾害临到。
But there will be sudden occasions where there may be danger or disaster.
特别是在我们这种冠状病毒蔓延的时期，
Especially in this prolonged period of the COVID-19 phenomenon.
大家真的是人心惶惶。
We see people all over starting to panic.
有一些国家不只是封城，甚至是封国。
Some countries have even resorted to locking down their entire country.
我们新加坡还没有封国，但是政府已经下令，所有的娱乐场所跟宗教活动必须要停止到4月底。
While the government in Singapore has yet to announce a lockdown of the entire country, yet the most recent measure was to suspend all religious activities as well as to close down all entertainment outlets from until the end of April.
这再一次引起了我们在新加坡的人心里更加的惊慌。
Now this only stirs up more fear in the hearts of the Singaporeans.
我一路来啊，听了一些安弟安哥在讲啊，你还没有去买货啊，要赶快囤货啦。
On my way to church, I overheard some uncle and aunties talking among themselves saying, have you stocked up on your goods? You better do so.
很可能很快就要封城了。
It could be that very soon there will be a lockdown.
真的，这的确是会让我们担心的。
Now this is worrying to us.
刚才我来的时候，有个姐妹问我一个问题，
When I came to church, a sister asked me this.
那你对于我们现在这个情况有什么看法？
Do you have any thoughts concerning our current situation?
我就问她，这个情况你特别是指什么事呢？
And then I asked her, when you talk about this situation, do you mean anything in specific?
那她说，对我们现在教会要暂时停止聚会这一段时间，你什么看法？
Then she replied, more specifically to this measure that the church has to stop holding religious services.
我告诉她，
And then I replied,
我说这是好的啊，
this is good.
这是对我们一个训练，也是对我们一个考验。
Because this is both a form of training as well as a test for us.
我们不能在会堂聚会了，我们必须暂停会堂的聚会。
We are not able to gather in church for service. We have to temporarily suspend our services.
但是我们对神的敬拜并没有停止，
But our worship towards God does not end.
教会会安排线上聚会。
Because the church has arranged for a live streaming service.
那我们领会跟讲道的人会在会堂开始聚会。
And the speaker will speak the sermon in church.
那么我们的信徒在家里就跟我们同步来聚会。
And then our members who are in your own homes will have service together.
所以这是我们一个很好的训练。
Therefore, this is a very good form of training for us.
我们习惯在会堂聚会，很少在家里有聚会了。
We are very accustomed to having services in church rather than at home.
那现在没有了会堂的聚会，我们能不能在家里聚会呢？
And now, without this option of coming to church for service, will we still be able to do the same at home?
那教会有线上的聚会可以带领我们同步聚会。
The church will be conducting live streaming services so that we can also have service.
但是有一天，我们连线上的聚会都没有办法安排，也没有人讲道。
But when there comes a day when there will not even be such online services, or if there will not even be a speaker,
那时候我们能不能够继续在我们的家里带领我们一家人来聚会敬拜神？
then would we still be able to lead our families in worship, to have service?
所以我想这是一个很好的反思，也是一个很好的训练。
Therefore, I feel that this is a very good training as well as a point of introspection.
尤其是我们平时在家里的人啊，有一些都很懒惰来聚会的。
Especially if we have family members who are lazy and to come to church,
或者他们不看重这个聚会，
or they do not see the importance of services.
那我想这个时期正好可以鼓励跟带领家人全部一起在家里来敬拜神。
Then I believe that this period will become an opportunity for the entire family to worship God together at home.
尤其是现在政府都鼓励我们 stay at home。
Especially now the government is encouraging everyone to stay at home.
每当我想到那一些医疗人员啊，拿着那个牌子说，我们为你们站在前线对抗病疫，请你们为我们留在家里。
I'm reminded of the scene where the healthcare workers were holding on signs that say something along the lines that we are at the front line, fighting for you. Now please fight for us by staying at home.
真的没有事，我们真的待在家里比较好，不要再添乱了。特别如果我们有不舒服的时候，更要看医生，更要隔离。
And it is true that it is safer for us to stay at home, and if you are not feeling well, you should see the doctor and to isolate yourself.
那更重要的是，在这一段时间，我们照常聚会，带领我们的家里人在家里一同来聚会敬拜神。
But what is also important is that we bring our families together and continue to have services at home.
也许我们没有感染到这些病，
Maybe we will not contract the disease at all,
但是我们看到那么多人感染，那么多各国是这么样的惊慌，死了那么多人，
but when we see so many victims worldwide, so many deaths worldwide,
那我们岂不是也应该本着基督徒的爱心来为他们祷告吗？
should we not also pray for them on the basis of Christian
因
love?
为我们不知道什么时候这个患难也会临到我们的身上啊。
Because you will never know when this affliction might come upon us.
我们不是害怕这一些，
We are not afraid of these,
而我们怕我们不懂得来信靠神。
but we should be fearful that we do not know how to trust in
所
God.
以这段时间真的是提醒也鼓励我们，应该好好在家一同来祷告，祈求神的看顾和祝福。
Therefore, this period of time should in fact encourage us to pray more and to turn to God for guidance.
耶稣也告诉我们，
The Lord Jesus had told us
在你们祷告的时候要这样说，
that you must say this in your prayer.
不叫我们遇见试探，救我们脱离凶恶。
Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
在这个冠状病毒的非常时期啊，我们真的要求主保守我们，不叫我们遇见试探，救我们脱离这些凶恶。
Therefore, in these trying times, we should indeed pray in such a manner to ask God to deliver us from evil.
因此，我们要效法大卫的信心。
Therefore, we ought to emulate the faith of David
当面对危险和患难的时候，
in the face of danger and tribulation.
不是想到死亡跟害怕，而是想到我们应该怎么样来依靠神，归向神。
We should not be fixated on death or fear, but to think about, or but to focus on how we ought to turn to God and to return to Him.
好，第二点，
Secondly,
大卫在征战中合神的心意。
David was a man after the heart of God in his battles.
撒母耳记下第5章
Let's turn to 2 Samuel chapter 5,
19节。
verse 19. 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 19. So David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hand? And the Lord said to David, Go up, for I will doubtless deliver the Philistines into your hand.
我们再读22节到23节。
Let's also read verse 22 to 23. Verse 22. Then the Philistines went up once again and deployed themselves in the valley of Rephaim. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, and he said, You shall not go up, circle around behind them, and come upon them in front of the mulberry trees.
大卫在过去打了好几场胜利的战争，
Now David had fought many victorious battles before this.
可是他并没有因为过去的得胜而得意忘形，而任意而行。
Yet he did not become arrogant over his past victories and resorted to his own means.
他仍然是信靠神，照神的心意而行。
He continued to trust in God and to carry out what was according to God's heart.
所以他在打仗之前就求问神，可以不可以上去攻打？
Therefore, before this battle, he sought the Lord and inquired of the Lord whether he should go up against them.
神说可以，他就上去了。
And if God were to permit him to do so, then he would.
神说你要从后面去攻打，他就照神的心意从后面去攻打了。
And when God here instructed him to circle around behind them, that was exactly what David did.
可见的大卫在征战中是合神心意的人，
Therefore, we see that even in his battles, David was after the heart of God.
因为他不任意而行，他是按照神的心意而行。
Because he did not do according to his own whims and fancies, but he followed what was according to God's will.
所以他开战之前或者打战之前，他都要先求问神。
Therefore, before every battle, he will first inquire of the Lord.
那么大卫去打歌利亚的时候，有没有求问神呢？
Now, before David fought Goliath, did he also seek the Lord?
我们看到大卫并没有先求问神，然后才去打歌利亚，
We didn't read of David inquiring of the Lord before fighting Goliath.
因为这是不需要问的问题，
Because this was a question that didn't need to be asked.
因为这很明显是合神心意的，所以不用再问神可以不可以。
Because it was very clear that that was according to the will of God, therefore there was no need to seek for instructions.
大卫说
David said,
这个非利士人怎么可以这样来辱骂神的军队呢？
How can this Philistine defy the armies of the living God?
有人杀掉这个非利士人来除去以色列人的羞辱吗？
Will anyone kill this Philistine to rid the shame of Israel?
没有人出战，
But nobody stepped forward.
大卫就靠神勇敢的出战，
So David himself courageously took the first step.
他的目的是要除去这个羞耻。
And his goal was to remove this shame.
所以大卫的出战不是为了出名，乃是为了神的名不要被这些外邦人来羞辱。
Therefore David fought not for his own reputation, but for the sake of the armies of the living God to not be ridiculed.
这就是大卫在战争当中合神心意的一个地方。
And this is one aspect in which David was following the heart of God in his battles.
我们的信仰生活就是一场征战。
Likewise, our life of faith is in fact a battle.
那我们是为神的名出战，还是为了自己的名来出战？
Now the question is, are we fighting for the name of God or for our own names?
我们常常是该打的战，我们不敢去打；
There are battles which we know we need to fight, but we do not.
那不该打的战，我们偏偏打到半死；
And those that we ought not to fight, we choose to spend all our time fighting them.
不该打的战，就是那些血气之战，是为自己的名来打的。
The battles that we should not fight are those fleshly ones where we engage in them for the sake of our own flesh.
该打的战，就是为神的名来打的，
But the battles that ought to be fought are those that are fought for the name of God.
这才是美好的战。
This is the good fight.
我们的征战合神的心意吗？
Are our battles according or do we follow the heart of God in our battles?
第三点，
Thirdly,
大卫在侍奉中合神的心意。
David followed after the heart of God in his service.
我们请看撒母耳记下的第6章，
Let's turn to
撒母耳记下
2 Samuel chapter 6,
第3节。
verse 3. 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 3. Verse 3. So they set the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drove the new cart.
第6跟第7节，
Verse 6 to verse 7. Verse 6. And when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. Verse 7. Then the anger of the Lord was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him there for his error, and he died there by the ark of God.
起初大卫他们是用新车来运送这个约柜，
In the beginning, David had used the carts to transport the ark.
使用新的牛车，这的确是人的好意。
And it was in fact it was in fact good that he chose to use a new cart.
但却是违背神的心意。
Yet this was not according to the will of God.
因为神的心意是要用人来抬约柜，不是用车来载约柜。
Because God had intended for man to carry the ark and not for it to be transported on a cart.
那么当这个牛车牛市前蹄，约柜就要倒下了。
And so, when the ark was about to fall off the cart,
乌撒就伸手去扶住约柜，
Uzzah put out his hand to try to support it.
他是出于好意，
He did it out of good intention,
但是却违背神的心意。
but this was not in accordance to the will of God.
因为神已经很清楚的吩咐说，人不可以触摸这一些圣物，要不然他会死亡。
Because God had made it clear that man should not touch these sacred objects, if not, they would die.
但是人却不把神的警告放在眼里，以为这个是不要紧的，反正我是好意。
However, men did not choose to accept this advice because they think that they are doing it out of their own goodwill.
在这个时候，你的好意比神的旨意更重要，你的好意可以去推翻神的旨意，这是人的想法。
Now, human beings, they will think that their goodwill supersedes God's will.
但是其实人的好意怎么能够推翻神的心意呢？
But the fact of the matter is that how can man's own goodwill be even better than God's will?
我们认为的好真的是好吗？
What we think of good, is it truly good?
我们看见的、所想到的只是这一个部分，我们没有想到全体，想到更远的。
What we see and what we consider is only based on that specific object or situation, but we are not able to view beyond that.
所以我们发觉到，我们常常是好心却做坏事。
That is why we find ourselves doing bad things out of good intentions.
到最后我们发觉到原来是这样的时候，已经来不及了。
And at the very end, when we discover our error, it is too late.
因此，我们必须要反省我们自己，
Therefore, we need to reflect
不要说我是好意的就一定是对的。
and examine ourselves, because what we think to be good may not necessarily be good,
尤其在侍奉神的事上，
especially concerning our service to God.
我们的好意不能够违背神的旨意。
Our own goodwill should not disobey God's will.
我们要反问，我们的好意是不是有违背神的心意？
We ought to examine ourselves as to whether our own goodwill goes against God's will.
那这样我们才是一个合神心意的人。
That is how we become one after the heart of God.
那大卫他发觉到他的错误，他就改正他的错误。
That is why when David saw his error, he corrected himself.
可见的，一个合神心意的人啊，也一样会做错事的。
And so we see that even a man after the heart of God can make mistakes.
但是他会发觉到他的错误，他能够改正自己错误的心意，而听从神的心意。
But he will come to understand his mistakes and to submit himself to the will of God by putting aside his own will.
这才是一个真正合神心意的人。
Now that is a man who is truly after the heart of God.
我们再读第14节跟15节。
Let's continue to read verse 14 to verse 15. 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 14 to 15, verse 14. Then David danced before the Lord with all his might, and David was wearing a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet.
20节到23节。
Verse 20 to verse 23, verse 20. Then David returned to bless his household, and Michal the daughter of Saul came out to meet David and said, How glorious was the king of Israel today, uncovering himself today in the eyes of the maids of his servants, as one of the base fellows shamelessly uncovers himself. So David said to Michal, It was before the Lord who chose me instead of your father and all his house to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. Therefore I will play music before the Lord. And I will be even more undignified than this, and will humble in my own sight. But as for the maidservants of whom you have spoken, by them I will be held in honor.
当大家在迎接约柜的时候，
When the people were welcoming the ark,
大家都没有想到一件事情，
no one had ever thought about this thing.
大卫竟然脱下了他的王袍，他竟然走下来跟民众一同在神的面前欢呼，极力的跳舞。
That David had taken off his kingly garments and to mingle with the people and dance among them.
他的妻子看见了，就嘲笑他。
When his wife saw this, she mocked him.
以色列的王啊，今天好威风哦！
Oh, how glorious was the king of Israel today.
但是大卫怎么跟他讲呢？
Now how did David reply?
他说：“这是在耶和华的面前。
It was before the Lord.
我本来是一个牧羊的人，是个很卑微的人，
I was a shepherd, I am a lowly person.
但是神今天让我做了以色列的王。
But today God has made me the king of
我
Israel.
比其他的仆人得到更多的恩典。
I have received so much more grace than any other servant.
我岂不应该比其他的仆人更加的卑微，更加的来感谢敬拜我的神吗？
Therefore should I not put myself even lower than all the other servants to praise and to thank God?
米甲认为你是一国之君，
Michal reckoned him to be a king of the nation.
你是高高在上的，
He was supposed to be above all.
你怎么去跟平民一起跳舞，好像那些婢女一样呢？
How can you go and dance among the people like one of these base fellows?
这是大事身份，也大事你的尊严的事情啊！
So this is a big disgrace not only to your reputation but to your dignity.
但是大卫的想法就不一样。
However, David did not think in this manner.
如果有一天神赐给我们比别人有更高的地位、更大的能力和财富的时候，
If one day God was to grant us with an elevated status, or if we were to have more wealth and power than others,
那你是像米甲那样的想法，还是你是像大卫那样的心意？
would we think in the same way as Michal, or would we have the same heart as David?
在神的面前，
Before God,
我们不是想要怎么样来维护，或者我的尊严，或者让自己更加的体面。
we should not be focused or thinking about how we ought to maintain our reputation amongst people,
而是想我们应该怎么样放下我们的身段，跟大家一同来侍奉神，来敬拜我们的神。
but rather to put aside our own prestige and to come together with the people to worship God.
这才是一个合神心意的人。
Now this is such a person who is after the heart of God.
第四点，
Fourth point,
大卫在奉献上合神的心意。
David was after the heart of God with regards to his offerings.
历代志上29章
First Chronicles chapter 29,
14跟15节，
verse 14 to verse 15. First Chronicles chapter 29, verses 14 to 15. Verse 14. But who am I and who are my people that we should be able to offer so willingly as this? For all things come from you, and of your own we have given you. For we are aliens and pilgrims before you, as were all our fathers. Our days on earth are as a shadow and without hope.
我们如果读前面大卫所奉献的，你会发觉到竟然奉献那么多。
If you were to read the earlier passage, you would discover that David had offered so much.
但是大卫却说：“我的奉献其实算不了什么。
Yet here David said that his offering doesn't count as much. ”
他说：“我们是把从你而得的来奉献给你。
Because here he says that all things come from you, and of your own we have given you.
其实明明是他们用手劳力来去赚取而得的，怎么说是从神而得呢？
Now isn't it the case where these people work hard for what they had earned? Why did he say that it comes from God?
因为大卫明白，
Because David understood
如果神不赐给他这个机会，他能够得到吗？
that if God had not granted him this opportunity, would he be able to receive this?
如果神不赐给他生命活着，他还有命去得吗？
If God did not sustain his life, would he still be alive to receive this?
是因为神让我们活着，是因为神让我们给我们机会，我们才比别人得的更多。
It is because God sustains our lives and gives us the opportunity that we can receive much more than others.
所以我们岂不是应当要来感谢神，奉献我们所得的一小部分吗？
Therefore, shouldn't we give thanks to God and to offer a small portion of what we have to Him?
为什么有许多的人不能够甘心奉献呢？
Why is it that some people are not able to offer willingly?
因为他们认为我所得的是我辛辛苦苦拼了命才来赚得的。
Because they feel that whatever they have earned is earned out of all their hard-fought efforts.
他们忘记了，
Yet they have forgotten
没有了命，你要怎么样去拼？
that if they are not even alive, or if they are not well, how would they even be able to fight for
所以
them?
如果我们有大卫那一种的了解和觉悟，我们一定会像大卫一样甘心乐意的奉献了。
Therefore, if we have the same consideration and realization as David, then we too would offer willingly.
我们不用担心我们奉献了我们就会少了。
Now let us not worry that by giving more we will end up with less.
通常赚很多钱的人啊，他奉献很多，他不觉得一回事，因为他赚的钱太多了。
Typically, for a man who earns a lot, he might give a lot, but he may not feel that he loses out a lot.
但是对于只是赚2-3千块钱的人啊，你奉献100-200块，真的好像是割了他一块肉一样啊。
But for a person who might earn up to $2,000 or $3,000, by offering a sum such as $100 or $200 is like giving a part of you away.
他要养一家的人都已经不足够了。
It is already not sufficient or insufficient to bring up an entire family with their earnings.
再奉献上去，他不是更少了吗？
And now by giving away more, would he not have less?
所以我们穷人总有一种的想法，那神赐给他有钱，应该有钱人奉献啊，我们穷人不用奉献是有理由的。
That's why the poor might have this conception that God gives money to the rich and therefore they should offer more, whereas the poor should not offer.
当然，我们没有鼓励你饿着肚子，你也要奉献呐、
Now we do not encourage you or we do not compel you to go hungry just so that you can give your offerings,
因为你都不乐意，
because you are not even willing to do so.
你都这是在饥饿当中，你怎么会乐意奉献呢？
Because when you are starving, would you still be able to offer so willingly?
教会也从来没有勉强这一些人奉献，
The church has never forced these members to offer.
但是主耶稣告诉我们一件事情，
However, the Lord Jesus, He tells us one thing,
他说有个穷寡妇，她把她养生的2个小钱都奉献了。
and that there was a poor widow who offered even 2 copper mites.
当然2个小钱不能够养她一生啊，是说她那一餐的钱啊，她宁愿忍住这一餐的饥饿，奉献这2个小钱，要不然她哪里有机会，哪里还有钱来奉献呢？
So these 2 copper mites would have been offered by her at the expense of one of her meals.
她知道饿一餐不会死的，
She knew that going hungry over one meal would not cost her her life.
但神不让她活着，她就真的会死了。
But if God did not permit her to live, then she would surely lose her life.
虽然神没有让她比别人富足，
Even though God did not make her richer than others,
但是她不是看别人，但是她看自己从神那边得到恩典，让她活着，她就感谢报答神。
yet she did not compare herself with others, but she looked within and she was grateful of the grace of God, and that was why she decided to repay God.
这2个小钱感动了我们的主，也感动了我们。
These 2 copper mites moved the Lord Jesus and likewise continues to move us.
我们应该要想到神，我们应该要尽力来尽用一点的力来，不是说报答了，来感谢神的恩典。
Let us set our minds on God and to offer to God to give thanks for His grace.
我们的神知道我们有多少的，
Our God knows how much we have.
我们尽我们的力量来帮助神的教会，
Therefore, we just need to put in our effort to help to the Church of
不
God.
用担心你会损失的。
Do not fear or worry that you will end up
神会
in a
在
greater
其他的
loss,
地方祝福你的。
because the Lord will bless you in other areas.
当亚伯拉罕把他独生儿子献上，
When Abraham wanted to sacrifice his only son,
神对他说
God said to him,
论福，我要赐大福给你，
I will bestow upon you great blessings,
你的子孙要好像天上的星，地上的沙那么多。
and your descendants will be as innumerable as the stars in the sky and the sands in the seashore.
当哈拿把撒母耳献上的时候，
When Hannah offered up her son to the Lord,
好不容易从神那边得到这个儿子，你就献上了。
why would she do so after she finally had a son?
因为他知道神会赐福给他的。
Because she knew that God would bless her.
他后来又生多了3个儿子2个女儿。
And then she went on to have 3 more sons and 2 more daughters.
你看亚伯拉罕、
So when we see Abraham,
大卫
David,
或者哈拿，
or Hannah,
他们都是在奉献上合神心意的人。
all of them were after the heart of God with regards to their offerings.
我们把从神而得的奉献给神。
We are merely returning to God what we have received from Him.
所以今天主的教会需要的时候，
Therefore today, when the Church of God has a need,
我们能不能够这样的甘心乐意的奉献，来尽我们一份的力量？
would we be able to contribute willingly and to play our part?
但是我认为大卫在奉献上有一个很让我们感动的地方。
And I also feel that David, with regards to his offering, has one dimension where it is able to move us.
他愿意建造圣殿，但是神却不让他建造圣殿。
He was willing to build the temple of God, even though God did not allow him to do so.
他并没有因为这样他就放弃不再帮助建造圣殿的工作。
Now he did not give up on this construction just because he wasn't able to do so.
反正你都不要我建造，不是我不要去建造。
After all, you don't want me to build the temple. It is not that I myself don't want to build.
那为什么我还要这样的尽力来去帮忙呢？
So then why should I still continue to help out with this?
可是大卫不像我们这样的想法。
However, David did not think in such a manner.
虽然神不要他建造，
Even though God did not permit him to construct the
但是
temple.
他还是尽了他的一切的力量来帮助建造圣殿的工作。
Yet David still gave his all to assist in this construction.
因为他不是看到谁来负责这个工作，
Because he was not fixated on who will be in charge of completing this work,
他看到的这是神的工作，
but rather he saw it as this being the work of God.
因为他爱神，
And because he loved
他
God
爱神的圣殿，
and he loved God's temple,
所以他尽心尽力来帮助神的圣殿完成这个建造圣殿的工，来帮助完成建造圣殿的工作。
and that is why he put in his heart and gave it his all in order to assist in the construction of the temple.
这就是大卫在侍奉上、在奉献上合神心意的一个很重要的地方。
And this is an important aspect in which David was after the heart of God in his service,
这是我们应该要学习的。
or in his offering. And this is something that we can learn too.
有时候我们也会面对这样的遭遇的。
Sometimes we might meet with something similar.
你很想帮助这些工作，但是人家却拒绝了你的帮助。
You truly want to assist with this work, but you have been rejected.
明明我的能力才干比他好，但是他们偏偏不是选我，是选别人来去负责。
So it is clear that I am more capable than this person, but yet they chose this other person to be in charge or to carry out this work.
那好多人就生气，既然你看不起我，你不需要我，那 OK， 那我就袖手旁观了。
Then this person might reply, okay, since you undermine me, you do not want me to work, therefore I'll just stand and watch.
看你怎么做。
I will just watch and see how you do it.
但是这样的心理是神所不喜欢的。
However, this mentality is not something which is pleasing to God.
所以在这个时候，我们要想起大卫。
Therefore, at that point in time, let us think about David.
当你真的很有心要为神做，但神却不让你做，你真的是会很伤心的。
It is true that you will feel hurt when you are not able to do something for God which you really want to do.
但是大卫不是伤心，
However, David here did not sorrow
他明白神有神的旨意。
because he understood that God has his own will in mind.
那神告诉他的理由，他也接受。
And David accepted the reason that God gave him.
你知道吗？如果我是大卫，我很难接受这个理由的。
And do you know, if I myself were David, I would find it very difficult to accept God's reason.
你说我流血杀了很多，但是我是为谁流血？我本来是牧羊的人呢，但是你叫我做国王，我做国王不是要带领来打仗，不是要打退敌人吗？不是要流血吗？我还是为你而流血啊！结果你说因为我流太多人的血不能够建造圣殿，你叫我怎么样接受这样的理由，对不对？
So you say that I cannot build a temple because I have my hands are stained with blood. But look, I was a shepherd before, and you are the one who made me king, and you made me fight, and so I had to kill many people, and now you stop me from building the temple.
但是大卫就是一个合神心意的人啊，
But yet David was a man after the heart of God.
他看重神的心意多过他的心意。
He respected and esteemed God's will much more than his own.
他不是没有想法的人，
It is not that he is one without any opinions,
但是他愿意放下自己的想法来顺服神的想法。
but he is willing to lay aside his opinions and to be submissive to God's will.
神在寻找一个合他心意的人，
God is looking, He's seeking for one who is after His own heart.
神寻得大卫了，
And He found David.
所以求主帮助，
Therefore we ask the Lord to help us,
让我们也像大卫一样做合神心意的人。
that we also can grow to be like David, a man after the heart of God.
我们请唱赞美诗145首。
Let us rise and sing hymn 145.